27th meeting of the Manchester-Essex Regional School Committee at 6:04 p.m. Chris is having some connectivity issues, so we are expecting him on shortly, but we can get started without him. And we can go to public comment. If you have a public comment, please put your name and address in the chat, and we will call on you. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. All right, I'm not seeing any public comments in the chat. Is there anyone calling in who does not have access to the chat and would like to make a public comment? Please feel free to unmute yourself and tell us your name and address. All right, hearing none, we will move on to our consent agenda. Who was just sharing? Do you mind putting the agenda back up on the screen for me?
I was on the wrong day, so not the right day.
It's one of those weeks.
And we have no out-of-state travel tonight.
Okay.
So it's just warrants and minutes.
So it is, I'm pulling up the number of the warrants, sorry. Without our steadfast leader, I'm a step behind.
It's 1040 to 1042 for the AP warrants. Payroll voucher for January 27th, 2026, and the minutes from January 13th, 2026.
All right, so as Maria said, that is what our consent agenda consists of tonight. Thank you, Maria. We are remote, so we do need to do a roll call vote. I'm just going to go down as you are appearing on my screen, which might not be the way you appear on other people's screens. Jake Foster.
Yes.
John Beniris.
Approve.
Lindsay Banks.
Yes.
Nadia Wetzler.
Yes.
Teresa Whitman.
Yes.
And I am a yes also. It's unanimous. Let's move on. I see that we do have Maggie online, so why don't we do our student report?
Awesome.
Do you have us, Maggie?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I totally just glitched, so everything's frozen, but if you can hear me, we're good. And I'm in bed, so don't mind the background. But, okay, student report. Snow days. I'll start off strong. Everyone was very excited that we had snow days, so thanks for that. That was pretty great. All the students, regardless of age I talked to, were very excited and happy to do that.
All Mother Nature on that one.
Oh yeah, but it was wonderful. It was great, much needed. At our last meeting, we talked about two of the things that were brought up at the last school committee meeting, obviously. The first one was the question about the add drop period being a quarter versus the normal 2 weeks for AP classes, but specifically for people who opted into an AP class, like wavered in. And none of us seemed to have any concern about it. None of us really knew anyone who was in that situation, and general consensus seemed to be that most people who are choosing to waiver into an AP class anyway are kind of gonna stick it out to begin with. Like, they know what they're getting into kind of a thing, but we haven't really heard anything of this. The other thing we talked about was score projects. The idea of the policy aligning with the practice of it. The main concern we talked about was the idea of, like, is there an inequity in AP hours taking away from the amount of time you're doing in score and stuff? And everyone seems to, again, be pretty much in agreement that if you're taking a very heavy AP course load, it makes sense that you have less hours because you're working in classes all day anyway. And it led to a really good discussion about how score could change or improve based on different things, rather than being just an unpaid internship into possibly like a capstone project or something like that. So it was a good discussion. Other than that, all of the activities still seem to be going well, going strong. The only big thing to note is coming up this Thursday, I think at 6 p.m. There's the rising 8th grade families begin their transition into high school with the event I think we've hosted pretty much every year, where students and families come in and hear from the department heads of each of the class or of each of the different areas, and I think a student panel as well. So that's pretty exciting. But that's all I got. So if you have any questions, let me know.
I just have a small correction, Maggie. Is just parents, I am told, for the
Good to know.
moving up
Thank you
night.
very much.
Not well. I don't know if how involved the high school students are, but 8th graders are not going to it, which I know because I have one.
Awesome.
Any questions for Maggie? Great. Thanks, Maggie. I hope you got some downtime after the dramatic start to your day.
Thank you.
All right. I have no report because I didn't know that I was doing this tonight, but we are moving on to subcommittee reports, and I know that we have one from our elementary facilities. Is that going to be Teresa or John tonight?
I think this one's me because John wasn't able to make it last night. So just pulling up.
Take it away, Teresa. Thank you.
All right. Got it. So first of all, just to let everyone know, the preliminary design program that we approved in the last, I believe it was in our last meeting, it was submitted to MSBA, and now we're just in the process of communications to get that final approval on it. There's no MSBA board meeting approval for this one. It's the first deliverable of 2 in this module 3. So now we're on to working on the second deliverable, the preferred schematic report. And so we did meet last night. We met remotely for obvious reasons. We approved vouchers for the design team and the OPM. We are still on time and on budget. Though the time, I will tell you, one concern that keeps coming up is that the time frame just feels really short to the people who are seasoned and who have done this. It feels like it's going very quickly, and it is. But we're adjusting where needed, and that's good. Also, some of the consultant fees that have come in were paid through those vouchers as well, so that's good. We did last night take the official vote on the design alternatives, as the school committee had been reported out to last time, that we had taken the straw poll to advance only with the design alternatives that involve pre-K through 5 on the EES site, meaning to remove the combined elementary schools at Manchester Memorial and the 3 options that involve splitting the student body, the pre-K through 3 in Essex and 4 to 5 going to Memorial. We had taken the straw poll at an earlier meeting in January. I reported that out to school committee at our last meeting. Did not receive any additional feedback from school committee members with any concerns about that. And so we were able to move forward last night with the official vote. It was unanimous to advance only the 3 options that involve pre-K through 5 at EES, or excuse me, on the EES site on Story Street in Essex. And those 3 options will be the required renovation or code upgrade, addition and renovation, and new construction. So that's where we are right now, is looking at those. And so with that, we were able to have a site update because all of this extra work is going on behind the scenes as well. We got a update on wetlands, some confirmed wetlands area. We were able to look at, on the plan with the buffer zones, and it shows really just how tight the site is. Also a geotechnical first look at the soil and the bedrock and the groundwater, and it really does show just how many, what the challenges are with this site. They're not insurmountable. Manchester Memorial was a tight and difficult site as well. Certainly the team's up to the task, but it's a first look at that. And those things really informed the next part, which was the design update. We took a first look as a group last night at potential layouts on the site for each of those options for code upgrade. So just the building as is, but what that might look like to attempt to meet the educational program. as is, and add reno, so renovate as is, but put an addition on there, and then also a new construction. A good focus of this was to try to avoid phasing as much as possible, to avoid the cost of modulars, which is very, very expensive. But this was just a first look, and the invitation was put out to all the SBC members, in the meeting. Now is the time for input. So everyone got to ask all their questions, give their comments, give their suggestions, concerns, all of that in the meeting last night, so that at the next meeting, they will come back with the next iteration of these options. And we're just working through a refining process. It's going to be, the next few meetings are going to probably be a bit longer for us as we work through this. And we're going to have some extra behind the scenes work to make sure as SBC members that we're really sending our input both in advance and after, because it is just such a tight turnaround to work through this. But this is going to be the main focus of the next few meetings. And we do have community meeting number 4 tomorrow night at Essex Elementary School. This will be an opportunity for the design team to basically bring the community up to speed on everything I've explained to you in the last couple meetings, where we are right now with the 3 design alternatives on the EES site as pre-K through 5, and how we got to this point, and that what factors went into the decision making, so that people can ask their questions as well, and make sure that all bases were covered in terms of helping the community understand where we're at and why. And so you are all invited, as always, to attend that. You're welcome to attend in person or online, and we're looking forward to that. Pam, thoughts? Did I miss anything?
Sorry, on the money. And I think if I think back to Memorial, there was that sense of there's so much to do too. I think we're pretty much on track. In some of the more detailed work that I think was being recalled last night actually happens in the next phase once they've got it kind of blocked on the site, so to speak. So I think we're going to be okay. But it's really exciting to start to see it take shape.
It is. I had someone contact me after the fact saying, I'm really starting to get excited about this, which I thought was really neat, because up until this point, it's just wading through a lot to get here. And now we're actually diving in. And there are a ton of, consultant and educational team and all different kinds of meetings going on behind the scenes. Everyone's putting in a ton of work, and we really appreciate all of it, but it's all coming together, and I'm really looking forward to the community being able to be part of that tomorrow night to be brought up to speed at this point.
Awesome. Any questions from the committee?
Just, are these meetings well attended, would you say?
So we've had 3. The first 2 were very well attended at Essex Elementary School. The third one, if you recall, was held at Manchester Memorial, and there was no new information. It was just a combination of the first 2 meetings held at Manchester. It was also the middle of December. That wasn't very well attended. So we'll see moving forward. I think a lot of people were very interested early on to know how this was going to unfold. And so we'll see, what tomorrow brings. It's also a tricky week with weather and everything else. But I feel really good about the fact that not only were the first 2 so well attended, actually, I feel really good about the fact that they were that well attended, because all of those people now know where to turn for information, how to have their voice heard. So at this point, I'm less concerned about how many people show up to something, because I know that we had such a strong showing right up front that when people are ready to engage, they know how to do it. And we'll continue to outreach and to, extend invitations. But I think that initial push was really beneficial.
I think too, what we'll start to see is actual on-site designs for Essex Elementary, and that I think will get more attention as we get into February and March, because our community meetings are recaps of the work that's been done. So this will be the last one that recaps all of that initial PS PDP phase. So all of the studying of the very broad and wide options. And now our promotional materials and our updates and newsletters will tend to have little snippets of what the drawings are starting to look like. And that usually gets people's attention because it starts to feel, it doesn't feel so big, and there starts to be decisions and actually something really tangible for people to weigh in on. So again, exciting to start to be at this phase.
I agree.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. That was very thorough, and I agree. It is starting to feel more concrete, and I'm glad to hear that we have a little bit more of a defined direction for the project. That is very exciting.
Do you want me to flash the agenda again, Kate? I keep putting it up and taking it down.
No, I have it on my other screen. So if you're wondering why I'm not looking at any of you, it's because you're actually on my other screen. So subcommittee report from Finance Committee, we do not have one. Is that correct?
We have not.
And Policy and Advocacy Committee, we do have a report. Teresa, Lindsay, Nadia, is one of you prepared for that?
It is not me. I was unable to make that meeting today. I am positively bedeviled with meetings.
I mean, I can jump in and say we spoke mostly about the wellness policy, but there are still some open issues that need to be resolved before we can bring it to this committee for discussion and approval. So we'll be doing that, I think, in the next meeting, the next school committee business meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And then we only touched briefly upon the fundraising policies, and we talked about how we're going to each put together kind of a list, maybe of some issues, concerns, things that we would want to see covered, and then we'll use our next policy and advocacy subcommittee meeting to discuss that and to try to align on something that we can then bring forward.
Great, thank you.
And I don't know, Pam, do we want to bring up at all? We're still talking about communications plan, but we just spoke about the fact that that's something we'll need to cover in an upcoming subcommittee meeting.
That's about,
I wanted to also add, an update as far as the newsletter. We don't have a newsletter draft for this school committee meeting. We had one meeting in December and issued a newsletter then. And then I had typically been doing newsletters every other meeting and including information from the previous two. So after this meeting, I'll plan to draft a newsletter for review by the entire committee, working in partnership with Pam for the February 10th meeting.
Great, thank you both. I had seen that we had where we had written wellness policy on the agenda, we had written second read. Have we? I don't remember the first read of that.
It was either, I think it was in October.
Okay.
It's
I will
been a
write
while.
a note to myself so that I know where to find it. Thank you.
I'll go back. I can go back and find the agenda that it was on and the date we did it. It came out of committee. It was early in the year. It was either end of September, beginning of October. There was some feedback. It went back to the wellness committee. And then from the wellness committee to us. And it's just kind of taken a while with the different schedules for it to come back again. So if you guys are taking a look at it in your packet and seeing something you want the policy subgroup to take note of, just send those notes our way.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Negotiations subcommittee did not meet, so that brings us to you, Pam. Superintendent's report.
I will make one note under the, I guess it's not really negotiations. If you haven't had a chance yet to fill out the availability calendar for February 3rd, at this point, it doesn't look like we have a quorum yet. So we might have to go back to the drawing board, but if you just wouldn't mind taking a peek and just logging, if you could do any of those meetings, that would be a big help. We kind of know it's going to be tough to squeeze one of these in. All right. The other thing I wanted to note, well, it slipped my mind now. It was something, finance subcommittee. We don't have a report, but we are lining up for a collaboration meeting on February 5th, I believe is the date that we've chosen. We just haven't identified a location. I think it's going to be in Essex. So I have a few notes tonight, and we're going to start with the weather, because this has been quite a beginning to the week. Just a reminder for anyone who, I haven't gotten any feedback that people weren't getting their snow calls or didn't know where to look, but just as a reminder, because it looks like we're going to be potentially dealing with something else again next Sunday, Monday, this coming Sunday, Monday, that we connect Ed, calls to everyone, emails, we post it up on Facebook, and it goes on all of the television channels, posting that we're going to be closed or delayed or whatnot. So if for some reason you did not get a communication during this last storm, please let us know, so we can update our database. I just want to give a big shout out and thanks to our custodial and maintenance team. They are working double and triple time rather during a storm to make sure that they stay on top of things and that the buildings are cleared out and ready to go. With a 2-day storm like this and almost 2+ feet in our general area, both town and school, we just could not work fast enough to be ready to go for this morning, because the storm went into last night and there was just not enough time to make everything safe. So we really hate doing a second day, but we're always going to err on the side of safety. And from what I can tell, our neighbors were all in a very similar predicament. So we put a lot of thought and effort, a lot of thought and analysis into, trying to determine it. It's really not a whim. So I thank the team who's out there checking the roads for us and checking the buildings. And just one thing to report, Steve Hunt is the manager of our maintenance team, and he had flagged for us yesterday and spoke with Michelle and I both about concern about the Essex roof and having nearly 2 feet of snow on the Essex roof. So he did have a crew out there today taking the snow off the roof to make sure we could keep the building safe for kids. So I think that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on as we go forward. Another update would be the middle school principal search. We have been posting since just before December break. The posting closed today, and we're going to start to review resumes this week with the goal of initial interviews next week, finalists after February break, with hopefully making an appointment by that first week of March. And then one other note is, we're
sorry, if
budgeting
you're on the
for-
phone, could you please mute yourself? We can hear your chaos.
We are budgeting for it, and it's built into the FY27 budget. We're going to open a transportation contract bid in February, and that is our regular ed daily run transportation. And the request for proposals will go out, and we will collect those bids and make a determination. But that's going to be happening over February and March. And then just a reminder, Teresa covered it. We have the Essex Building Committee community meeting tomorrow night. Hope you'll attend. And if the weather isn't great and it's still cold, you can always just log in and view the meeting remotely or view it at a later date. It will be posted up. And Maggie covered it, but a reminder that the 8th grade transition to high school night is on Thursday this week. And that is it for me, because the rest of the work is really around the budget, which is our main conversation tonight. No questions.
Just briefly, Pam, did you get a decent number of resumes? Do you feel like you have a good selection for the middle school principal?
We just got them in today, so we're just starting to go through them. It's not a huge pool numbers wise, but using NESDEC was helpful. From my first glance at it, we did get some out of state, like regional applicants. And in talking with them, they said our numbers were as strong as any middle school principal search that they've seen this year, that it is really one of the hardest positions to attract candidates to and fill. So we haven't really dug in, so I'll reserve comment until next meeting, maybe when I've had a chance to actually look at what's in that grouping. But we're excited. It's another exciting thing that's happening this year, and excited for the middle school and in its future. So looking forward to that process.
Awesome. Pam, I was driving around Essex this afternoon and checking out the job that the town and the schools had done cleaning up. Essex Elementary looks like it's all ready to go tomorrow, including the sidewalks leading up to it, which is awesome. I did have a question about bus stops and sort of how that works on these. I can't remember a time when I had kids in school and we had this much snow. So I don't know sort of what the expectation is.
We went through this in 2015, and unfortunately, I don't think we could wait for sidewalks to be complete to go back to school. If you see a bus stop that you think is particularly hazardous, please call us directly so we can interface with DPW in each of the towns to get it remedied. They have been great in this. They wanted to know, are we trying to go to school? You know, for their planning purposes on how to approach things. They're always very cooperative and collaborative in reaching out to us. So it's kind of a team effort of reasonableness, and there just wasn't any way that they were going to be able to get to all of them. And I don't think they'll be able to get to all of them by tomorrow morning. I know Steve did do some clearing of sidewalks right on Lincoln Street. So usually if we can have safe passage into school and get cars in and out, we'll be ready to go. In terms of the bus stop, I would say parents use judgment. You know, if it's a good day to drive and you can, that's great. But if you're eyeing something of concern, flag it for us and we will try to get somebody out there to address it.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Pam?
Does it look good for tomorrow? How are things looking?
Bus stops?
Just in general, condition of the roads.
The roads are great.
Okay, but it's those big banks on the corners.
Yeah, it's the big banks, and I think it's doubly difficult because of how limited street parking is also. So it's hard for parents to have their kids sit in the car at the bus stop because there's nowhere for the car in some cases. But we will make it work. Hopefully some people can get out with their shovels and we'll figure it out. I do see that Chris snuck on and was trying to fly underneath the radar. Are you still with us, Chris?
I am, yep. No, I was just waiting. You were doing such a fantastic job.
Are you on as a private citizen tonight? Do you have
Nope.
do you have any public comments?
No, I don't.
Well, we
Thank
just
you
finished up the
for
superintendent's
jumping.
report, so I will hand the gavel back over to you, my friend.
Right. Thank you, and I apologize about being late again. Nothing I could do about that. Internet issues. I'm not really sure what was going on. Seems to be okay now, but if I drop out, you may need to step back in, Kate. So thank you for filling in, and unless we're just moving on to continued business, right? Which is, do we want to handle the district calendar first and approve that as a next step? Great. Do you want to pop that back up, Pam, so that we can all just take a final look?
Okay, are you seeing my screen? Because for some reason, when I put my screen, there you
Yes.
go. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't had to do this much online since, I'm not even going to say it, back in the day. We were always online. So we, last time we brought calendars forward, we're going for a 2-year approval this time around. And our big point of debate is what to do with December 23rd, which is the day before the holiday break in December. In the calendar school year 26-27, it's particularly a point of discussion because if we take it as a full day off, then we are automatically into a new week in June after a long weekend for Juneteenth. If we take it for a half day, we would end on the prior week and into a long weekend, unless of course we have snow days. So I think your calculation there is what's the probability of a snow day that's going to land you into the next week anyway? And then does that change your thinking around 12/23 as a half day off or a full day? Do we just want to always be in the practice of 12/23 being a half day or a full day off? Those, I think, are the two things that people are trying to consider. I don't think one decision lands you in a forever situation. So we've talked to a lot of people about it, and everyone kind of says, well, we were hoping you might give us some direction or add some opinions and help us make a choice.
Pam, do we have data on the attendance rate if the 23rd is a half day?
Not for a couple of years now. I can say unofficially it tends to be not the best attended day. And so would the last day of school as a half day.
Yeah, I feel like we run into it on the other end either way, because if we have one day after a holiday weekend for the last day of school, it's 6 1/2 dozen the other. If you're looking for opinions, I'm of the my personal opinion is I'm good with whatever the administrators and teachers prefer. But if you're asking, I would go with the half day for 26 that doesn't automatically land us with that over the long holiday at the end of the year. If we can avoid it, great. We got 10 years between 2015 and this year, so 15, 16.
How many snow days do we have built into the calendar? Is it 2 or 3?
5. So we always think of the last day of school. We probably should get into a different habit, and it would probably change everybody's thinking. The last day of school right now would be the 17th, but it's really not the 17th. By the calendar, the last day of school is the 25th, because we plan for having those 5 snow days. So it's only the 17th if there's no interruption in the school year whatsoever.
And how often does that happen, that there's not at least one snow day in the year? Because I feel like we've pretty much always had at least one day. And the only difference I would say is at the very end of the year, like mostly tests, exams, and everything are done, whereas the quarter doesn't end right before Christmas, right? I mean, you're usually still in the middle, or it ends like after the holidays.
For the high school, it does, but the middle school's on trimester and elementary.
Yeah, but does the trimester end? Is the trimester end right before Christmas? I didn't think it was. I confess I should know since I have a daughter in middle school, but my impression is it was earlier.
Yeah, it was the beginning of December.
Yep.
It's right down here. The report cards will be scheduled to go home on the 18th, with the trimester ending on the 4th.
Yeah, sorry, Pam. I also know, from experience having 3 kids, that usually no one is really focusing on anything when it's right before Christmas. Everyone's just way too excited about upcoming Christmas and presents and all that.
Except high school students who get truly loaded that week.
True.
At least this year.
That's true.
So does somebody want to make a motion to advance option A?
And option A is a half day on the 23rd, correct?
Yes, for 2026, 27.
Do we really think that there's... Second.
Discussion?
Discussion? Okay.
Yes.
I do have discussion. Sorry, I had to run outside and move a car across the street because the plow guy finally showed up really conveniently right now. I feel as though it is very likely that there will be a closure for something, whether it is a snowstorm or a power outage or one of those storms that comes through in the fall and we have a bunch of trees down. I think it's very optimistic to assume that there will not be any weather days.
Yeah,
which would put us into the next week anyway. So I don't think that the closing day should be part of our decision.
Yeah, and we have the one extra day built in for that week already. I would suggest, unless there's a separate recommendation from staff or administration, that we do a half day on the 23rd.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but nobody actually said they had made that motion or seconded it. Was there a motion on the table right now?
yeah, I made the motion and
Teresa
Kate
made the
seconded.
motion and I seconded it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It sounds like none of us have very strong feelings about this, and so it's just 6 and 1, half dozen the other.
I don't know how we landed on having the half day.
That had been
I would
what
prefer option B.
Because the motion for option B, sorry.
I was just going to say, we had been doing, until we got into the 2-week, we had 2 years of 2-week breaks. Prior to that, we were taking a half day on the 23rd.
My preference would be to have the day off. I am concerned about the number of half days that we have on our calendar overall. It's like 30 hours of learning time or something. I would rather just have, but I understand that it could just be a half day at the end of the year instead. But I'm not a big fan of replacing our full learning days with early release days.
I'll be so bold as to say it is a half day to manage the year-long calendar. Right. I mean, it's a half day for the purpose of trying to save time at the end of the year.
Is there any other discussion?
I did a straw poll and
Nope, go.
Okay. I think most people I was hearing from prefer to have school on the 23rd. No mention if it's a half day or full, but prefer to have school on the 23rd and then get out earlier before summer. One person of 7 or so that I polled said that they would say no school on the 23rd and that it's likely we would go through that weekend anyway, so we might as well go. So, not official numbers here, but my gut was kind of to go with option A, and that's kind of what I was hearing in the community based on very, very superficial survey.
I would say my preference is for option B, just because I know a lot of families who travel for the holidays, and there's not much buffer if you are expecting your kids to be in school the 23rd.
How many total days is the vacation?
It will be.
I can't see it's like
7. We'll be off for 7.
And plus the weekend. I think that maybe I'm making assumptions, but I think that Nadia's point was more to if you're trying to get somewhere for a holiday, you have fewer options.
Yeah, I'm thinking
either like for the holiday.
For that holiday, yeah, you'd probably skip school because if you're trying to be where you're at on the 24th, you're going to be traveling the 23rd. So chances are your kids won't go to school.
I think that makes sense as well.
So do you want to vote on the motion that's on the table, which is actually for option A? And then if it passes, great. If it goes down, then you can advance option B.
Are we approving the entire calendar, or are we focusing on December right now?
the entire calendar.
Okay.
The entire two years of the calendar.
If you're not ready to,
no,
yeah, I mean, I was
2
taking
years?
them in
Yes.
each year at a time.
Each year at a time. Okay.
Um,
So
Because the
So
same two
we'll vote.
options are present for the next year.
right. So we had, I know that we keep talking about the early release days and when we should have the early release days and how many early release days we should have. And I think I did go back through prior calendars trying to remember what the history on it was. And I think that there was a year when more than 10 had been suggested, and we went back and forth a little bit and then settled on 10, which was a compromise from the contract, which requires 8. And so our conversation at that point had been around sort of why we needed additional professional development days. And at that time, it was right after COVID. It seemed like we really needed those. And one of the I am trying to remember exactly how the conversation went. I think that the concession was that we were trying to make them a little bit easier for families by putting it with a long weekend. I know that there was a concern that maybe they weren't as productive for teachers if they were on a Friday, but this year we only had one on a Friday. That was a PD day. The other ones were conference days. I guess that I'm just putting it out there for conversation because I know that in our last meeting we had said that these are contractually bound.
Mhm.
My understanding is that only 8 of them are contractually bound. And so I wanted to make sure that we all understood that. And if we really do think that we need 10, and if Heather is still telling us that we do, and the professional development committee is still telling us that we do, maybe that is something that we need to look at in the next contract negotiation.
Heather, can you offer anything about the discussion at PDC? I can pull the contract and take a quick peek.
I'm happy to speak to that. I was not here right after COVID, so I can't speak to what was. What I can tell you is the first year I had a chance to be involved in the calendar making process was the draft for the 24-25 year, because the prior year had been established when I was here. At that time, there were 8 as what the contract required. Based on continual feedback from both the professional development committee and administrators, it's simply not enough time over the course of the year when we're doing really targeted professional learning, when you're thinking about beyond things like staff meeting. And when you think about a staff meeting, that theoretically is an hour, but when you're really thinking about how much time you can really get into the content. So for the 24-25 school year, the Professional Development Committee proposed to moving it up to 10, both to make sure that we can continue to advance that professional learning over the course of the year, and also make sure that there's a consistent, predictable routine for families. Some districts will do weekly, some will do other pieces. That early release allows us to have, still have academic learning happening during the day, make sure that lunches are still served, but also make sure that all of our teachers are available to have shared professional learning experiences. And that's become increasingly evident this year when we have cross-level groups that are working together, which can't always do it when you do a simple at the end of a day. You can't get elementary folk and secondary folk together in the directly after school because of the different end times. So I can't confirm that proposal to increase it to 10 did come from the professional development committee 2 years ago when we were doing a lot of that calendar work, looking at feedback from administrators and teachers around the fact that it just feels like there's not enough time to go deeply into that content and professional learning. And the feedback in the community of having it be predictable was what led to this year's being on those first Wednesdays.
Thank you, Heather, for that context.
No problem.
Can I ask Pam, Heather, do you guys have a recommendation here? Again, I know you're bringing it to us but I'm looking. Don't toss up.
I would likely go, if it were my, I'm trying to synthesize all of the inputs and not make a purely personally driven decision based on what I think will likely happen is we will likely end up in that next week anyway. So I think what I'm trying to communicate is if the main driver for a half day is the hope that we get out on the 17th, the likelihood of that is pretty small. If we think it's best practice and want to establish that the 23rd should always be a half day unless we're looking at a 2-week span, then we should make it the 23rd. So I think I'm looking for some feedback on whether or not we're looking to establish some type of consistency on how we handle it. I mean, we could make it a full day. I mean, we haven't put that on the table. If we think the half days are problematic and they really just create a condensed schedule and aren't necessarily conducive to getting anything done, we can make the 23rd a full day. I do think we would have some attendance issues on both sides, both parents, both faculty and students.
But
so
if we were talking about making the 23rd a full day to get the full learning experience out of that day, moving it later in the year doesn't change the number of hours that students are receiving instruction. Right? It's not like if it gets moved to the end of the day, now we have 2 half days in a row or something at the end of school.
I mean, we can make the last day of school a full day too.
Right. I know it's already a half day, but I'm saying if we didn't have school on the 23rd, it's not like we're adding a half day on to the end of the year. We're adding a full day on to the end of the year.
Right.
Okay, so since we're still in discussion, I will put out, and we are currently looking at the option to have the 23rd as a half day. I will put out my opinion based on all of the discussion we've had that I am in favor of moving forward with the 23rd as a half day, in particular to continue the established pattern that we have had in the past, which is to have that half day on the 23rd, giving people a little bit of a break before travel, to deal with travel for the 24th and 25th, and also to keep that half day in the numbers that we already have right now with what the teachers are needing. I am in favor of keeping that moving forward. And I do like the idea of having it be something we don't have to readdress every single year, that if we sort of come to a consensus of, if it's not a full 2 weeks, this is how we handle the 23rd. And that's where I stand.
So piggybacking on that comment, let's look quickly at the following year, 27-28. Does it change your mind at all if in 27-28 it's now Thursday, that's the 23rd? So it will be a half day Thursday going into a Friday, 12-24.
I'll tell you, it doesn't change my mind.
Okay.
We're going to end up with.
So then that would be the consistent practice. Half day unless it's a 2-week.
Can you scroll down a teeny bit?
Yep.
Thank you.
So option 2 would be no school the 23rd. And we would tag on a day at the end of the school year.
Yes. So you would be out the 14th and then have actually 2 snow days before that long weekend impacts you. Okay. You ready to vote on the 23rd? I mean, are you ready to vote on 26, 27, option A calendar, which is the half day on the 23rd?
Chris, are we ready to vote?
So.
Okay.
Yes, I believe so. All those in favor? I'll start. Yeah. So first is Kate.
No.
Teresa.
Yes.
Jake,
Yes.
John,
Approve.
Nadia.
No.
Okay, then who am I? Lindsay,
Lindsay.
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So where does that land us?
5 to 2
5
to
yes,
pass it.
2 no. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to
Now,
the
27, 28. Does anyone want to make a motion to advance option A for 27, 28?
I would is this I'm sorry, Pam. I should know
It's
this.
okay.
Our new contract will be starting in 27, correct?
Maybe, yes. We hope so.
In theory.
Yeah. Nothing
I
would
would
prevent you from
hesitate
going
to
back and changing the calendar.
okay.
What it would
I mean,
what it's gonna
insofar
do,
as like start dates and vacations and stuff, that's yeah.
it lets family know kind of the big planning times, the beginning of the year where the vacations are going to fall, that type of thing.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
I mean,
I'll
we've
make a
changed.
motion. I'll make a motion to accept draft A of the 2027-2028 calendar. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, second. Kate.
All right, any discussion? All right, then we can go right to voting. Kate,
No.
Teresa,
Yes.
Jake, John,
Approve.
Nadia,
No.
Lindsay,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Moving on to our vote on stabilization fund appropriation for the Memorial School Project band payment. Do we have
Michelle.
content to share first, or do we make a motion first?
I'm going to put up Michelle's memo, and if she wants to give a kind of a shorthand or a summary explanation of it, and then maybe make a motion and take any questions.
Perfect.
Absolutely. So yes, in your packet, or actually as of last night, you received a memo asking for an appropriation of $50,000 towards the pay down of the temporary note, or what we call a bond anticipation note for the Memorial Elementary School. This originally, this temporary bonding was put into place in March of 22. For 1.3 million. Last year we renewed it, came down to 1.1 million. And this year we will be asking next week for approval, bringing it down to 650,000. But because the note is more than 3 years old, we have to pay down a minimum of $50,000 on the note, and it cannot be used with proceeds from this bond. The tricky part is all of our proceeds are really there to float our costs, because everything is going to be reimbursed by the MSBA. So we didn't need to essentially appropriate the funds, but in order to meet Mass General Law, we do. So technicality, so we have to take this out of our stabilization fund at this point to meet this requirement. Next year's $50,000 I will be adding to the town's debt capital budget, because it will be also required next February as well, because we're doing the one last year of the renewal of the note. MSBA is in the process of closing out the project, so we will have our reimbursement within the next 12 months. So we won't have an issue with this again, but this is just a timing issue because these notes have been out there for so long. So we request your approval of an appropriation for $50,000, and the motion is at the bottom of that suggested motion.
All right, thank you. I will make a motion that the school committee appropriate the amount of $50,000 for the stabilization from the stabilization fund for the required pay down of the bond appreciation notes that are due February 26th, 2026.
I
Do I have a
second.
second? Thank you, Nadia. Any discussion?
I have a quick question, Michelle. The way is this like a temporary thing? I mean, is this essentially getting reimbursed by MSBA? Is that what you're implying, or is this a payment kind of above and beyond that we were that is unexpected?
The funding source is unanticipated. I thought we could just use our proceeds because we had the money in the project. So it might be a matter of timing where we have 50,000 left in the project that we're going to have to appropriate towards a capital project instead of taking it out of the stabilization fund for another project. So in a roundabout way, it will wash, or somehow we will find we're able to reappropriate these funds back to stabilization at some point. But right now, just because of the timing and the requirements, that bond council has made a determination that we have to have a pay down of the 50,000 that is appropriated and not from the bond proceeds.
Yeah, that part makes sense. I was just wondering about the longer term implications. Thank you.
Yeah, longer term, we'll figure it out and get it back where it needs to go. This might take a little bit.
Can I ask a question?
The closeout is a complicated process from what I'm observing.
Yes.
I've cut somebody off, I'm sorry.
And it usually happens many, many, many years after the project.
My question was, you had said in your memo, we anticipated the final reimbursement from the MSBA would have been received by this point in time. Is there any indication like why it hasn't been received yet, if it's anticipated to have been received already?
I'm not sure what part of it is I was going to say we were still paying bills up to about a year. I want to say our last bills were paid last June on the project. And that was for some supplemental items, and I'm trying to think of what we bought at that point. I don't even remember, to be honest. I know some benches and whatnot. So our final expenditures for the project were probably about 9 months ago, 10 months ago. Since that time, we have worked with our project manager, our OPM, who is also our OPM on the Essex project. It took a little bit of time to reconcile this project because I was not involved with it back when it first started many years ago. So literally we had to go back into cash flows, go back into every expenditure, every receipt, and make sure everything is ticked and tied back to day one of the project. So that took a little bit of time. And now there is a backlog with the MSBA about 6 to 9 months auditing the project. So we're trying to get it through as quickly as possible. It's in the final stages.
It's getting all of the closeout paperwork finished on both our end and then the MSBA end. So the reimbursement is not in any jeopardy.
Right.
It's just a very lengthy, bureaucratic, paper-driven process to close out. So even in that call that I had sat in on with the financial advisors, MSBA is notoriously taking a long time with these closeouts. So it's a point of frustration.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then what does that leave the stabilization fund at?
After this 50,000 appropriation, we will be at $904,000 before any interest earnings are added for this year.
Probably doesn't help, wouldn't hurt to remind everyone that stabilization has actually been the account in which we've been putting in interest proceeds from the building project to do projects at Essex Elementary for parity. So the majority of the funding in stabilization has come from the building project. And I mean, it went to things like upgrading their technology, their security,
Playground.
Playground. Mm-hmm.
Is there any further discussion? All right, then we can go to a vote. Kate,
Yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
John,
Approve.
Jake,
Yes.
Nadia,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we can move right on to our FY27 budget workshop.
Okay. We're actually really excited for this tonight. We've been able to do some good work, and we have been working right up to the last minute on this budget. We had a call with our insurance broker yesterday that yielded some good news that we'll tell you about shortly. So I thought we would take this in a couple of chunks. First, I want to revisit what we had talked a little bit about last meeting, kind of the broad strategies we were going to apply to the budget, and let you know what we've done and what's still in progress. Then we thought we would move to going through the updates that we've made to the budget documents that Michelle has shared with you and walk you through that memo. And then we can just go to questions and discussions about next steps and where we see this, how we see this developing over the next couple of weeks. So if you're okay with that approach, just want to remind you that last week we, on the 13th, we talked about a few strategies that we wanted to use to manage this year's budget. And one was keeping the reserves flat through 2030. And we had looked at some charts that show what the impact would be on both our E&D and our stabilization, and how if we continued to use them, but use them at a flat rate, we would be able to project out that in 2029, 2030, we would likely need to talk about some type of a correction or an override to account for the fact that we will be running our reserves down to about the 3% rate by that point. That we can do it in a disciplined way for the next few years, but this can't go on forever without some type of correction. So we have employed that strategy in this next iteration of the budget. We had talked about the idea of looking at changing our concept of our OPEB contribution and going with a flat contribution rate of $300,000 as opposed to just allowing the contribution to balloon each year. So we did employ that strategy in this budget. If we can discuss it, and if it's something that you want us to revisit, we certainly can do that going forward. So we did reduce the OPEB contribution to the flat rate of $300,000. We had talked about school choice revenue, keeping it flat for the upcoming year, meaning only replacing the number of students that graduate out. So we did keep that assumption in the upcoming budget. So we are keeping school choice revenue flat, and I believe it means we'll be taking 2 new students next year. We got the sense that you were on board with examining athletic fees and a fee and rental increases, and maybe looking at a student activity fee. This is something that we have put a pin in for now, and we'll start to look at in mid-February once the budget is resolved, as a way to kind of bring costs down in a second wave. So this is going to be in development. And then finally, we have looked at just the general spending reductions. And we were talking about a $250,000 to $500,000 reduction range, depending on how insurance renewal rates played out. With some of the good news that we received yesterday, right now we are looking at not needing to do a blanket reduction of $250,000 to $500,000. And Michelle can is going to walk you through the reductions or the the assumption tightening that we've done through the budget process over the past few weeks, and why we don't think we're going to need to do that going forward. So again, I think we feel like we're in a really good position right now with the budget that we're sharing with you. And if you don't have any questions about the broad strategies that we used, we can move over to looking at the memo that Michelle had supplied you earlier today, walking you through some of the adjustments we've made to the budget. So any questions on the first part? And I'm sorry, I thought I was sharing. I don't think it was up on your screen. So I was reading and using my hands, and it meant nothing to you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think we all get it.
Okay, so let's go to the budget memo and walk through some of the adjustments we've made.
Great. Okay, well, while you may not all agree how we attacked this, I'm certainly happy to come to you with what I feel is a proposed budget that is reasonable. So the first good news we received yesterday was that our health insurance renewal is being currently estimated at 14%. We had, up until yesterday, we had built in 17%. Originally, when we came to you, we were at 20%. So the number keeps getting better and better. And we do believe that it will continue to go down. How far down, we don't know, but we do think it will still continue to decrease over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully by the time we have an adopted budget vote, we will have some solid information with that. So overall, I will walk you through how we got to this, but right now, basically, our operating budget increases at 3.85%, or a total of $1.2 million over the FY26 budget year. As Pam mentioned, we have applied the same level of reserves with the 600,000 of E&D, and then the potential reduction of 150,000 to OPEB. Really, the OPEB is not taking the 150,000 out of the reserves, but it is potentially reducing our contribution for next year if we should need it in the health insurance line. I will remind you that this past year, we closed 25. We thought we were going to need it. We found out we actually did not. So we came back and voted that into the FY25 OPEB budget in August, or balance in August. So we have the same level of reserves. Our revenues are anticipated at 3.74%. So we are literally in the same ballpark as our spending at this point. The big wild card is the decrease in our OPEB contribution. So we were able to make this work by changing our OPEB contribution to the proposed, the tentative budget had 871,000 earmarked to go to OPEB. This new proposed budget has 300,000 earmarked to be contributed to OPEB. As we discussed originally, when this process was put into place, we restructured our health insurance plans, and the agreement was all of those savings we will contribute to the OPEB fund, which has been wonderful. And at this point, we are expected to have over $8 million as of June 30th in that fund, with our total liability being about 21 million. So we are more than a third there in terms of funding. So really, we are in tough financial times. Our towns are in tough financial times. We are considering a double-digit health insurance increase favorable, which is crazy, because you talked to us a couple of years ago, we'd never be talking about a 14% health insurance increase in a positive term, but we are. These are just the times we're in. So at this point, we are proposing that we bring the OPEB contribution down to 300,000. Roughly, we are earning about 700,000 in investment earnings each year. So that will increase our fund about $1 million each year. So that's what we're anticipating at this point. Another thing that I actually didn't even discuss with Pam, but in my history of being in so many different cities, towns, school districts, what a lot of districts are doing is once their local retirement contribution is paid up. So our Essex regional retirement contribution, which should be fully funded somewhere in the 2032 to 2035 year, should be fully funded. That assessment essentially goes away. We are just paying the current year cost there, if anything. We're no longer paying an $800,000 cost there either. So a lot of other districts or towns that I have been related, had a relationship with, their intent was to fully fund their county retirement and then go into their OPEB full force. So we could certainly still do that and bring these contributions back up to the current level we're at. I just think for the next few years, we really need to kind of pause the contributions, but not stop them whatsoever, because we're making some great headway. So that's the biggest change. There are some other changes I do want to mention. In terms of the spending highlights, personnel, the COLA is still 2.5%. There's not a change from last time. We are looking at increasing our staffing 0.4 FTE, which is bringing our speech and language pathologist position from a 0.6 back to a 1.0, just due to the demands and finding that it would be cheaper to have the person in-house rather than contracting for those services that we are doing right now. So we're doing that. And that is the only staffing increase that we have in the FY27 budget. Operating expenses, mentioned the health insurance increase 14%, which originally we had 20%. So we have a savings of over $300,000 from our tentative budget. Another point is our special education tuition and transportation costs. So while our overall general fund number or demand has decreased, our overall tuition essentially has decreased, with the exception of our school choice figures. But school choice pays for those outer district tuitions dollar for dollar, so it really does not impact us. It's a flow through our district. The other district, the sending district, is paying for those. So while we'll refer to, yes, we have under $3 million in out of district tuitions, a good chunk of that is being funded by school choice. But on the flip side of it, last year in June, we received some information that we were getting an additional circuit breaker reimbursement for some additional transportation dollars on the circuit breaker. They had funded it at a lower percent, and then they brought the funding up, I believe, to 78%. We received those funds in July. So technically they were for FY25 received or awarded in 26, but actually are awarded for 24 in 25, but we received them in 26. So now we have to spend those costs by the end of 27 because you have a 2-year leeway in terms of spending circuit breaker funds. So we received extra circuit breaker funds that we need to spend and put towards special education costs. So this is ideally what we would love to spend and put towards our tuition. So basically we're getting an additional $250,000 that we had not planned for in our circuit breaker fund. So we need to apply that. And because some of our placements are going up dollar-wise, our reimbursement is tending to go up, even though our number of students placed are going down, the dollars are going up. So our reimbursement is increasing each year. So really, those are the big changes. We now have some enrollment reports in here. We have staffing charts and crosswalks. We do have capital requests, a summary. We have not been focusing too much on the overall capital request. We've been dealing with a lot with the small cap, the things under $10,000 that we need to do as we come about day-to-day operations. The larger ones I've been bringing to you in terms of funding for stabilization. And obviously a lot of our focus is going towards the Essex School Building Project at this point. So we're doing that. And then lastly, the capital debt summary. And I did include the $50,000 for the final band pay down, which will be next February of 27. So that, and once we get to the final adopted recommendation, you'll have some additional, or I don't remember if we do that for the final book or we do that right after the final vote, but we will put the huge book together with all the trends and the narratives and all that great information that we find useful. But if there are any questions or any specific areas you want to dive into, please let us know.
Thank you, Michelle. We can go around the line here. Next to me on video is Pam, so we'll start with you, Teresa. You're Teresa, and then Lindsay, and then Jake.
All right, thank you. I don't think there's anything to be said, but this is very good news. It's a solid plan. I love the process that we're going through here, the providing a really structured plan at the last time, or a proposed plan for how to move forward with the creation of this proposed budget and the implementation based on our discussion last time. I am happy to hear, I know we were all open to all possibilities here, but I do really like that you guys were able to put a pin in the fees. I did get a little bit of feedback outside of the meeting that that's not a top preference, not that it wouldn't necessarily break a vote, but that's not the top preference. And it really got me thinking about, our district has had a shift in that we were, 10 years ago-ish in a position of trying really hard to be a district that didn't nickel and dime families for everything. Like that was an actual intentional choice. Yep. And it's a different time now. And at this point, there are things where we have to charge the people who are using the services. And we've been, increasing that. So I am glad to hear that we're able to put a pin in that for now, but that if we need it, it's there. I feel the same way as I felt before about school choice, that if we need it, it's there. I think I get it for not using it for this year. My only question, actually I have two questions. One is just a clarification based on last time. Big fan of the idea that we might not have to have that reduction moving forward, a planned reduction, the 250 plus, or 300,000 to 500,000. Does this account for retirement replacements and that sort of thing? So one thing we ran into last year was kind of a disconnect of not really quite realizing that not cutting doesn't mean that there might not be reshuffling with retirements and changes. So if you want to speak to that a teeny bit, and then I just have one other question.
Yeah, so one of the adjustments we made in personnel was to account for the known retirements, meaning adjusting existing salary down to the M5 budgeting salary that we use. Now, that's not to say it doesn't end up in M3 or an M7, but we've adjusted it to that budgetary number and then made another adjustment for another anticipated retirement. The budget does nothing to speak to personnel movement.
Yeah.
And a lot of the personnel movement isn't necessarily, at least what I hear in discussions programmatically, is more programmatic or student need at this point than financially driven.
That's just a great sentence to hear for the first time in a really long time. So thank you for that. And then my second question, and this is just a reminder, I can't remember if it was part of the discussed plan or if we have a plan moving forward. Should there be decreases that come after we adopt the budget? Have we already agreed where those decreases are going to come from or go toward, or are we're not quite there? I just can't remember if we agreed to something for this round.
We haven't agreed to anything. That was going to be that was the 250 to 500 band. It was, I think what that recommendation meant was, let's agree that if for the adopted budget, if we can't get our numbers where they need to be, that we identify how much needs to be reduced and then work on what that reduction plan looks like in March. Instead of trying to get that all tied up now.
Okay.
But if with the projection on health insurance at this point, it may negate that altogether. Like we're not holding, we had, coming out of last meeting, we had put a 250,000 unidentified reduction line in.
Yep.
But with the identification of the circuit breaker monies and then the healthcare reduction number that we got yesterday, we were able to take that out.
Right. Okay. So, but we're not at a position yet of looking forward of like, if healthcare
I don't
happens
want
to come in less,
afraid
and then
to
we're,
say it this way. We don't need to look at it right now.
got it.
Don't need to
Love
do
it. That is it. Thank you. This is great news. 3.87. Is that what we're looking at here?
3.85.
3.85. That's something that I hope will be music to our town partners' ears for sure. And I know it's something that's a great starting point for us here. And I appreciate all the hard work.
All right, Lindsay? Do you have any questions or?
Yep. I wanted to echo Teresa's thanks for all of the hard work. Being in the public side of this conversation a year ago, to hear that decisions are being made here that are student driven and not finance driven is beyond like what I dreamed of when I was like thinking about being on school committee. Like I didn't think that we would be here. So I'm glad for it. I did want to unpack a little bit of like the sense of drawing down reserves. Like I understand we're not giving as much to OPEB, but there was when we were talking about drawing down reserves and how that affects borrowing terms. We're obviously looking at borrowing for a big school building project. Can you just unpack that for me a little bit of that if we do draw down reserves going into this time period for Essex Elementary, how does that affect our ability to borrow our borrowing terms?
Ooh. Well, I think there's a lot of debate. I mean, Michelle, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. Gonna add my 2 cents. Really, our reserve levels are minimal. While we think, $1 million, $1.5 million is great, they will look that we're funding OPEB, which is a positive direction. But they also look very stringently at our member communities. So our bond rating will mostly be decided based on the financial stability of both Manchester and Essex. And not necessarily on the district, because we don't have many reserves and we're not able to have E&D larger than 5% of our budget.
That makes sense to me. And that was always something that I heard as a member of the public, that as a new school committee member, I wanted to better understand. Thank you. And then can
I just go on the record and say, I think there is very smart people with differing opinions on how that plays out. But the decision was made when we changed our reserve policy to lower reserves and not keep them as much on hand. If we went back 10 years ago, I think there was more of a consensus around it was all of the partners bond rating that was going to be impacted. I don't think ours is going to be that significantly impacted in the short term for this upcoming project, because we'll still be around our target. We'll still be in that 5 to 8% range. It'll be the out years where we start to get a little tighter.
Okay. That makes sense. And then there were a couple categories that increased more than the others that I was just curious about. I think there was 4. Nurses was up 14, almost 15%. Athletics and student activities up 14%. Security up 9%, and maintenance and custodial. I think you already addressed maintenance and custodial, but I was just curious. I'm sure there are explanations for these, but I think it's helpful to know what those are when you see those kind of bigger percent changes.
Yeah, really the nurses was a change in our staffing. We have 3 school nurses and I believe we had 2 vacancies, so we brought those salaries way down. And then we ended up hiring a little bit higher than we had budgeted budgeted them for in FY20 in the current fiscal year. So we're just bringing those back into line to where we hired them last year.
Plus step and column.
Yes. Yep. And
What was
that's
the other one?
part of it when we consider a retirement and we take a guesstimate about what the cost to replace that person's going to be. As Pam mentioned, usually we use an M5, a Master's 5, but sometimes they come in much higher on the scale or much lower on the scale. So it's just a ballpark of where to put them. But when you see a line with just 1, 2, 3 people, you're going to see that huge variation if they're not hired exactly where they're budgeted.
And that probably explains the special ed. I think it's special ed teachers as well. There's just fewer of them. And so that's that.
Yep. Yeah. And so there was also a slight shift. I think we classified someone else that was, because if you look at the total number of teachers and special ed teachers, they're the same in both years combined, but you look at the breakout and there's 95.65 and 25, 26 and 29.65. But then the next year it's 9.49 and 30.8. It's really just classifying some of those positions as special ed versus non-special ed and using those positions where we need them. So you're just seeing that bigger fluctuation in that particular line.
Great.
It's probably worth noting that these lines capture both head changes as well as annual step and scale and potentially column moves. So number of people and then the individual movement in the step and scale and column grid for salary from year to year.
Great. That makes sense. Yeah, so the other one pinpointed were athletics and student activities, security, which I saw. Yeah, I'll let you speak to it. Security and then maintenance and custodial, but that's not as big of a jump. But
yeah, so athletics is a change because our athletic director, I believe that's in the salary side of the high school. That's in that line. Our athletic director was a 0.6 athletic director and a 0.4 teacher. We made that change to make her a 1.0 athletic director with the reduction of our facilities manager. Some additional responsibilities have been picked up by her. So you'll see the staffing go from 1.1 to 1.5 in that category. So that represents part of that shift in staffing. While we didn't add a person, we just moved it from one line to another.
That's great. That's lucky for us.
Yes, very lucky.
And then, yeah, security, maintenance, and custodial. And then there's instructional supplies and materials. I mean, I know you've talked about things in meetings that I'm sure translate here and explain them.
Right.
But I just figured.
Until you see them. Absolutely. Security really is our, it's the cost of our SRO and our software and training for our security processes. So most of that is the SRO cost. So we basically pay for the amount of days that our resource officer is provided by the town of Manchester. They bill us like middle of June to tell us what the actual cost is. So it seemed like we had a lag in her salary. We were budgeting based on the last known cost, which was really 2 years prior. So we brought it up to what we think her salary is going to be this year. Plus, I believe it's like 10 or 11,000 for the computer program we use for training.
Thank you. This is so helpful. When I feel like
Lots
it
of
gives a little
information.
glimpse into the specifics of like what is the specifics that these line items are actually talking about. It's really
Right. No, absolutely. And that's why I welcome the questions. I mean, I wish we had more of an opportunity to do this deep dive, and maybe we should at some point just to have this deep dive of what each line represents and what the increases and changes are, because some of them have large decreases as well. So
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was focused on the increase.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then it was maintenance and custodial and instructional supplies and materials.
So maintenance and custodial, I'm assuming it's on the expense side of it. We have all of our custodians are contracted. So they have a 2.5% increase, but we're also going out to bid for next year. So we expect that to go a little bit higher. And then in terms of a lot of our maintenance costs, we're just finding them higher and higher every year. So we're trying to right size that as well. Those are lines that we're continually running short at the end of the year. So we're borrowing funds from other lines, but we want to try to right size those. So that's why they have such a large increase this year.
Okay.
And with a $1 million budget, a 7% increase is 78,000. It's not a ton of money, but when we're looking at maintaining our buildings properly, you definitely want to do that. And in terms of instructional supplies, we built in $50,000 increase for the pilot of some curriculum materials. Might have been 53,000. I can't remember the exact amount without pulling up that particular line. But yes, that had an increase of an additional $50,000 in that category.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know if this is more appropriate for a budget workshop or if this is helpful for everyone else, or like just Michelle and I to chat and wrap my mind around things. So in the future, I'm sure people will let me know, but that was helpful.
I think it's helpful because these are probably some questions that people may mention, they may not. So, and I think it's good because, as you know, this meeting is public and it's going out to the general public as well. So it's better to be informed.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple questions. Thanks for everything you've done here. But first, a quick follow-up to Lindsay's. Do we not have a contract with the SRO for the number of days? Like, why don't we know the specificity of that?
We do.
Yes, but if she takes vacation days or sick days or does not come into work, or depending on the number of school days, the days that she reports to the school are the days we are billed. Okay, so, and I don't know what her salary increases are each year. She's not getting just a 1% increase, 2% increase. She's probably getting additional increases in the police contract as well.
Okay. So Michelle, help me understand what changes you've made since the last version here. I clearly hear the reduction of the OPEB contribution, the healthcare change to 14%, and the extra circuit breaker funds new in this budget.
Yeah.
I think at our last meeting and in Pam's kickoff comments here today, there were other things that you were looking at on kind of the expense side. It sounds like one of those is a slight adjustment, based on retirement salary kind of thing. What other kind of expense changes have you made?
The only other two small changes that we made was a reduction in pay for 2 known retirements. So one was in the teaching category and one was in the admin category.
Okay. So I think I'm reflecting back on, Pam, your comments at the last meeting, where it sounded like you were moving towards a couple $100,000 of expense reductions that wouldn't impact things. Were these retirement adjustments what you were thinking about then, or?
We were going to just go. Yes, that was one of them. The other was to look potentially at funding curriculum pilot investments with some one-time money. We do have a little school choice funding left over from last year. I think what we did not anticipate exiting last meeting were first the circuit breaker funds at nearly $250,000. And then the significant reduction, a 6-point reduction in the health insurance premium, which together is over, it's about $250,000. Am I in the ballpark, Michelle?
I believe it's over 500,000. Yeah, 320 and 250.
So if you go back to the original notes, we were hoping that if we were to realize our health insurance reduction to about 15%, that we would start to look at a band of about $250,000 to $500,000 in reduction, depending on where it landed. So healthcare landed right, and then we received the circuit breaker, and that was able to basically help us bring that number down even lower.
Yep, and that's wonderful, and that's great. I think, reflecting on the reason that we're considering this strategy, particularly with the reserves and OPEB reduction, in an attempt to try to avoid triggering an override for the next couple of years. I think I'll be interested to hear what the towns have to say at our collaboration meeting, but I think we still need to be looking at, even if it's $100,000 reduction that doesn't have a program impact, we have one-time money somewhere, we should still be looking at that. I think it's great where we are. I want to applaud you all for the work, and I like where the trajectory here. But I don't think we are off the hook for looking at other options.
Did you have some recommendations? We did look at, we do have some facilities rental funds that we were going to potentially use to pay for a portion of utilities increases, because many of the utilities bills are incurred for after hours projects. That was one of the areas that we were looking at.
Yeah, I don't know what expenses you were considering, or what revenue sources, or one-time monies we have. So I'm happy to chat about it, but this probably isn't the place for it. But
it will end up.
I don't have specific recommendations. I don't know the details of what you're looking at.
I don't think we have a lot of nickels and dimes in the couch. I think we would likely go back and look at staffing again, if we were in the $250,000 to $500,000 reduction range.
Okay, that wasn't the impression I got from your comments at our last meeting. So that sounds like a change.
No,
Okay.
some of we were trying to identify what were one-time costs, and we came up with the curriculum pilot, because we do have roughly, I believe, the beginning of the year we started with school choice funds of about $278,000. So we could fund the $50,000 there, and the cost of an actual new curriculum program portion of that. We were also looking at the building use funds. How can we best utilize that? We have roughly $300,000 in there, but really it's not recurring funds. Yes, we get a little bit of money in each year, but these are funds that have been built up over time. So it's best to use them for one-time costs. So I'd rather not use them to nickel and dime our recurring costs, but I'd rather use them for capital projects, for one-time curriculum costs, for out of the ordinary, things that pop up from time to time. So that's what we were looking at originally, because we thought we were absolutely looking at a 20%, best case scenario, 15% health insurance. But we think by lowering the expectation on funding OPEB to the level that we have been, which has been fortunate, but it's not sustainable. So I think we need to reallocate that and then go forward from here.
And looking back at my notes, in that sheet that we had used last time, and I can certainly put it up, we were also anticipating between 75 and 100,000 potential from activity fees, and rentals and athletic fees. And I was silent on staffing, but not replacing retirement staffing if we are into March and needing to make up to $500,000 in reductions would certainly come into play. So I think we outlined 4 specific things we were going to look at, and then the ending bullet is basically a target range of 250 in annual reductions, depending on where insurance lands, but we would take that on in March.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Jake. Nadia, you're next up. If you have any questions.
Yeah, just to clarify what you're saying before. So despite the fact that insurance premiums came down and we have the $250K that we didn't expect, we still will need to find?
No, I don't think we will.
Okay.
I don't think we're going to need further reductions if health insurance premium renewal continues to trend down. If for some reason it holds, reverses itself, and we find ourselves in need of digging deeper, then we'll have to put everything back on the table, including the activity fees and whatever other cuts we can come up with. I think what I was trying to communicate last time, and if I didn't do so effectively, my apologies, is that I think it's premature right now to put a cut package together because it looks like we are going to get to at least 3.5 without having to do any major reductions. I mean, I don't think we're fooling ourselves. We're getting there by, you know, a significant reduction in OPEB. We deferred 150 last year. We're looking at deferring another 400,000 this year. We've got 250 in circuit breaker funding. We're holding steady on reserves, and we're gaining. We gained 4 points in healthcare just from our last budgeting cycle. So that's where we're getting the big chunks that are bringing it down.
Another question I have
chunks.
is whether the budget currently assumes certain funding contributions from the feds or the state. And if those assumptions turn out not to be true, which I have no idea, but we live in a very strange world, then are we concerned that, well, first question is, would we then have to go to reserves, right, to make up the difference, or where would we try to go? And given that, does that, where are we at in terms of our thinking on reserves? That to me is a big unknown that I don't think was part of our reality a few years ago.
And Michelle, I can't see everybody, so jump in if you like. I think this is where not getting a lot of state money actually puts us in a better position than many districts. So Chapter 70, all indications are we're going to get the standard per head fee again this year. Is it, Michelle, is it 150?
Yes. Yep.
So that's, that is a minimal increase that we get annually. If it were to disappear, we would have to make, if the state funding goes away, we'll likely have to make some cuts. I don't anticipate that happening. Right. Michelle, you want to explain how the federal grant is in its own bucket?
Yeah, so that's the big piece in terms of the state funding, is really that state Chapter 70 revenue. We do also receive a transportation reimbursement, but other than that, we are not reliant on the state for much. In terms of federal grants, we do pay some of our staff through federal grants that are not showing up necessarily in these dollars. So that would be a significant hit. We have 4.75 special ed teachers that are paid through revolving funds, which those would not go away. But we have 10 teaching assistants that are paid through a federal grant. So that would be an issue. And then we have certain stipends that are paid for grants, and they do pay for programs as well. They pay for our Title I program, our teacher mentoring program. So there are costs that we would have to assume in operations as we're currently structured with our bargaining agreement. And there are also student needs that we would have to fulfill if the grant funding went away. And yes, most likely we would turn towards reserves for those until we can figure out a new way to do business without those funds coming in.
And so the reserves we have would be sufficient to tide us over until we can figure out what we do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. Yep. It would be a year or two. We'd be good if we didn't use the reserves.
Do we have any indication of either way? Do we have any indication either way that either, there's still risk to the federal grants, or we don't anticipate it's going to impact us next year?
There's always risk in the world we're currently in, but not hearing as much concern as I was at the beginning of this fiscal year. Beginning of this fiscal year, we were all really concerned through, actually, even going back to the spring and the summer. We really didn't know if we got any of our grants, and we did. All of our grants were renewed for this year. So we're good for this year, we think. We don't expect any changes. We think we're good for next year as well. We're not hearing any major concerns with that right now.
Thank you. And thank you so much for presenting all this to us. I appreciate it.
No, happy to.
Thank you, Nadia. Kate, you are next in line. If you have any questions. Kate, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. I just have a couple quick ones. I noticed that we had moved our ELL coordinator. It said that we were portion reported under each school, but I did not see that reflected. Is that in a general admin line or in a teacher line, or where would that be for each school?
That should be under, I believe, the specialist teacher line for each school. It depends where you're looking. Let me look.
Are we looking for the distribution through the budget documents, or are we looking at the staffing chart?
That's it. Yeah, it's in two different places there.
So,
yeah, on the budget distribution, it would just be under classroom teachers for the most part, which is a 0.25 to each school, I'm sorry. And then because I had it as a district position and Pam had it as an individual school position, and it was the only teaching position I had as a district position. So that's why we made that change in the budget.
Okay, so when it says, so that explains where it, like at Memorial, for example, it says 2025 staffing level 19.15, 2026 staffing level 21.45.
That's part of that, yes. Yeah,
okay.
Part of it is also an allocation. We had retirements at the high school last year, and we moved them to Memorial, or at least one of them.
Great, thank you. And then my other, not so much a question, just a thought to put out there is, I want to preface it by saying that this is probably the most comprehensive and, I would say, well thought through budget that I have seen. And not that our budget, so I feel like we have more to work with here. Which is really exciting to pick through and really exciting to see this early in the process. So thank you both for sort of pushing yourselves to think even more outside of the box than we have in the past, and find every opportunity that we can. My input, and I guess it's more of a thinking point for the committee, is if our task is to really consider our ask to the towns and how to avoid an override until 2030. Are student activity fees something that we should consider still in an effort to bring that cost down even further? And I don't say that lightly, because my kids participate in a lot of activities, and I know that that is something that my family would be paying out of pocket for, very likely. At the same time, I recognize that we are a district that has these opportunities for our students, and when I look through our the amount that we're paying for student activity stipends. Not so much at our elementary schools, but definitely at the high school, and to some extent the middle school. I think that it could make sense to pass some of that cost on to families, and I think that it is worth a conversation by the committee, sort of ideologically, if that is a direction that we think that we should go. I don't think it's a direction any of us want to go, but I think it's a responsible thing for us to consider, for us to continue talking about. And then one super quick question to that end. I noticed that our student activity stipend lines are increasing at rates higher than I would have expected given our contracts. Is that because we are anticipating having more stipend positions, or?
No, quick answer, or the short answer on that is I misunderstood the budget last year. So I was told through payroll that we were not paying increases on stipends for 2 years, and we didn't until we renegotiated them. And then the union came to us complaining that we should have been paying the 2.5% COLA, or basically we came to an agreement where we did pay that 2.5% COLA, but retroactive last year. So the numbers you see for next year are currently what we have for positions for the exact dollar amounts, but with a 2.5% increase.
With the 2.5% increase on top of whatever the
current
existing gap was that we had. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes
so
more
sense. That was a right size, because Pam's like, no, that should have been going up 2.5% all along. I'm like, no, the costs weren't going up, so I didn't put the budget up. So,
Hey,
so that was a misunderstanding.
We had agreed to like a 1-year hold on advancing the stipends because we were going to work it out, but then 1 year bled into 2 years, and we were in breach of the agreement. I think
that makes sense. Thank you. I knew that we had said that we were going to renegotiate them, and I couldn't remember where it had landed. I was sure it hadn't landed at 10%, but also I was sure it didn't land at 0. So
we were able to deal with athletics relatively quickly, but we're still going back and forth on new concepts around some of the professional stipends and an overhaul of the student activity. So I think in the end, we'll likely have a better product. It's just taking a really long time to find the time, get everybody together to muddle through. The other thing worth noting is coaching is in here, and coaching has a step and scale associated with it. So if you're looking at the 9.3%, how does 2.5 become 9.3? Part of it is, like with the teacher scale, they move up and over.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Kate. John?
Yep. Thank you.
John,
I have
do you
nothing.
have any questions?
Yeah, I have nothing specific. A lot of the stuff that was on my mind was addressed to these other questions, but I just want to thank you for putting this together, and I appreciate the creativity and thought that went into this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And I'm in the same boat. I think, thank you everyone for all of your questions, and thank you, Pam and Michelle, for putting together and updating this budget. It's extremely helpful and has a lot of information in it. So thank you. Just in closing, I think just my comments. I'm very happy to see that in working with our brokers and all that we do every year to keep our health insurance costs low, that is trending in the right direction. That's very good to see. I do still, probably the single biggest thing in this budget that I still have concerns about, or conflicting thoughts maybe is the best way to put it, is our reduction in funding OPEB. I understand it, but it's also far from a less ideal situation. So I think I probably would recommend, if we do see further reductions in healthcare, I think that is directly, in my mind, is directly correlated to, I can agree using OPEB funds when we have out of the ordinary or significant increases in healthcare costs. But as those start to come down, I would like to see what, that actually potentially, go to, putting back into OPEB or, depending on what our reserves look like, into that bucket, one or the other. And then I would actually also agree with Kate that as far as additional fees, that should be something that we also take a look at. And that, of course, would go to directly, reducing the budget. There's also something to be said that, if healthcare goes up next year, perhaps that's something that we should, uh, every year we're looking for additional savings or additional ways to, reduce the budget. And if we pull all of our levers in one year, then we're out of any good levers to use the next. So I'm cognizant of that as well. So thank you again for all that you've done putting this together. I definitely appreciate it. So moving right on to closing then, unless Pam, you had any closing about the budget workshop? And you're on mute now, Pam. Sorry.
Well, I apologize for the coughing.
Yeah.
We were going to suggest that we kind of watch how the health insurance renewal unfolds over the next 2 weeks without making any other major moves, but also wanted to get a sense from this group about we're at 3.85 now. Do you want us to continue to try to dig a little deeper, like to Jake's point, like where we found ourselves yesterday and kind of rolling into yesterday with some of the positive things we were able to apply, like the circuit breaker, it was indicating that we were likely going to be able to do this without having to look at staffing or reductions, or to look at it in March if things didn't materialize. So just looking for a little bit of feedback from the group on, is there a target you had in mind? So is there more work for us to be done? Are you comfortable with the let it unfold over the next couple of weeks process? I think we are going to see another slight reduction.
I think the 3.85 is extraordinary given some of the increases that were unavoidable. I don't think that we should be looking at any reductions in program or staff. I do think that the conversation about student activities is more of an ideological conversation about responsibilities for the district, responsibility for family, responsibility for towns.
I'm a little confused, maybe the right word, I don't know, about timing here. Pam, you keep saying, kind of wait and see for a couple of weeks, but aren't we scheduled to vote on a budget on the 10th?
Mm-hmm.
So how can, I guess I'm kind of wondering how we can let things play out until,
because we're hoping to get another update before that meeting. So if we get the update we're anticipating, we may be able to reduce it further.
Okay.
If not, are we at a hold number? Are we at 3.85? Are you comfortable with it there? Regardless of what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in here. I mean, I'm absolutely not comfortable with the amount of reserves that we're using. I think it's high. I'm not 100% comfortable with the amount of OPEB funds that we're reducing. It's definitely less than ideal. I'm also very cognizant of, the fact that we need to do everything we can to keep our budgets at a reasonable rate and, reduce as much as possible. So that's where I stand.
From my perspective, I think I don't particularly have a target in mind here. I think we've, at least from our last meeting, I think we're agreeing that the strategy is to try to avoid a trigger and override. So to some extent, the answer to your question, Pam, comes from where the towns are. And we may not fully know that until, our next collaboration meeting on the 5th. But I think we should probably have in our back pocket a few ideas at least, and the fees is one of those. For if avoiding the triggering of an override is even possible, then we need to know the scale of what that is. If not, then $50,000 isn't going to make much difference, or $75,000 isn't going to make much difference one way or another. So I appreciate where we've gotten to, and I think that'll help the towns a lot. I don't have a sense yet of whether or not we've achieved that broader goal.
Teresa?
I will take a slightly different turn in that I was not under the impression that we had a unified goal of not triggering an override, because again, that's not within our control. Our two towns have different capacities and different levers for what will trigger an override in their town. And so my personal goal as a committee member coming into this year was to work this out early so that our towns have maximum flexibility. We are on target to do that. Knowing the extraordinary costs that we have had, not just as a district, but that our towns have, that individuals have, costs are up all over the place, plus the healthcare spike that everyone's experiencing. My hope had been to be in the 5 to 6% range overall, frankly. This is an aggressive strategy. I agree with Chris that it's not exactly comfortable to be using this level of reserves or comfortable to reduce our OPEB contribution, but I see the wisdom in it. And I think that bringing it down to 3.85, getting into a range which is predictable and stable, which is that's the phrase that's been your watchword for years and years and years. That is absolutely in the predictable and stable range of 3 to 4% that we have been talking about for years before these extraordinary rises. So I am comfortable with this as a hold number. If we get good news that the healthcare costs do come down before we adopt the budget, then I think we look at that again. I agree with Kate that the fees is an ideological conversation, and I don't personally see us needing to engage in that right now unless something changes after adopting the budget, but agree that it's valuable to have that as a group. But I would absolutely be comfortable defending this, sending it forward to our towns. And I also think that we are going to start running into trouble on the other side of things if we start to be nickel and diming even more than this. If we start, if we do as a committee say, yes, please look to bring this down even further than 3.85% by looking at staffing reductions or program reductions, I think we're going to have problems on the other side of this. And so I am in favor of moving forward with this and accepting any further good news as it comes.
Thank you, Teresa.
If I may, one thing I would add to what Teresa said is, Chris, I agree with you. If we get good news and the healthcare premiums are even lower, I would recommend putting that into reserves or increasing the OPEB share. I wouldn't use that to decrease the budget.
All right, thank you.
What I might think about doing, like 3.5 is, for better or worse, where I live. And that's kind of what I'm driving for. So when when we were able to amend the budget with some of these numbers that we got in, I was like, oh, we're almost at our target, our stable and true. And an identified goal every year to bring you the best program we can, unless we have a compelling reason to go higher than that number. Maybe we can model out, like, if healthcare comes in, you know, better than anticipated, is 3.5 the trigger for starting to return money to E&D or lower the amount of E&D? And I think that might be a really good debate, or it might even be a really good question for the public hearing. And, you know, and I hear you, Chris, on OPEB. I think our actual reserves are likely the place I would advocate more strongly to start reducing usage, because that, you know, I think that has more of a direct impact on the day-to-day. I think OPEB is a financial responsibility that we are trying to fulfill, but paying it at a rate in which we would be looking at making cuts to programs and things here, or putting ourselves in jeopardy for a capital repair because we're too tight on reserves. I would recommend the OPEB reduction, but yet still a steady and true approach to spending more reserves than we need to. But that's something that we could debate, and we can model it out. But maybe 3.5 could be the trigger for something like that.
All right, thank you, Pam. Any additional school committee comment before we wrap up?
Can I just make a quick comment that if we're talking about the public hearing and we're talking about the budget, I think we get a good turnout when there are specific cuts on the table, because there's cuts on the table, and also people have specific information in front of them and specific points they can address with their comments. I think it would really be helpful if going into this public hearing, we were able to generate or give them, and I don't necessarily know the process for this, but a set of prompts to direct, like, what do we want to hear from the public? I don't necessarily want to direct their comments, but there are specific things we want to know about. We want to know, how do people feel about the fees? We want to know how people feel about us using reserves. So is there a way for us to prompt or give guiding questions? Not that anyone could say anything they want to say, but to make it more easier for the general public to engage if they haven't been tuned into all these meetings and don't know all the issues on the table?
That's maybe a good question we can all think about. And if anyone has any comments about that, you can send them to Kate and I, and we can process it.
I like the idea of having a couple of guiding questions, even if we don't have them in advance, like right now, to be able to send out, you know, because it's next week, but to kick off the meeting with, so that if people are sitting there and just thinking they have to respond to everything, I think it's a good idea to have a couple key questions that people can choose to respond to in the moment if they want to. I like that idea.
And I think it does work if we send those to Chris or Kate, and maybe Chris and Kate can kind of pool, like, if we as committee members list what we all want to hear from the public, they can pool those things as potential prompts. Like, thank you. I think that's a great process. And I think that would work.
Yeah, sounds good.
I had one more question about the stuff that was up on, I was seeing activity on social media around the traffic at the middle school, high school. Has that been resolved? And I wanted to clarify, like, the process when you're unhappy with something going on at your school is to contact the principal of that building, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Or you just do what I do, is scream at people in line while in your car.
Honk. You're supposed to honk louder.
And manage your children, people. I have actually honked at people. I'm embarrassed to say so. I have.
Our family's testing out different arrival times, seeing when makes a difference. Yeah.
How about when you enter the circle, have your kid leave
the
vehicle?
Just to clarify, does feedback, because the communication that we received at the middle school about that came from Julie, not from Betty. So does feedback go to Julie, or does
I would send it to both of them?
Okay.
Yep. It's stemming mostly from the high school, because they're trying to solve the problem of student drivers and arriving on time and taking spaces where they shouldn't. So I would
I have
send it
some
to
other
both of
ideas,
them.
but
I would send it to both of them.
thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor? Kate,
Aye.
yes.
Teresa,
Yes.
Jake,
Yes.
John,
Approve.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Nadia,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Have a good evening.
Night.
Bye.